you, as you're getting federal funds, can you give us some of that money and pay for your patients? I
They're
mean,
also-
I'm just wondering, what is the mechanism to get reimbursed?
Well, they're also eligible for the Medicaid, and so
Okay.
we can assist them to apply for the Medicaid benefits.
Okay.
That's a recent thing.
Do you have is there an office from public health in GMH to help you speed up the process? I mean, there's got to be a shortcut to all of this, because everybody knows Medicaid, Medicare. Well, put somebody there so when somebody comes in and they check in, they say they qualify, boom, you're done, and you guys work out the
Thank you for
system.
that question, Senator. Yes, you're absolutely right. We do have eligibility specialists that are then part of public health, and also we recruited some individuals to be eligibility specialists. And so we're working with public health very closely, that once those applications are completed, public health then will process them.
Okay. And then you mentioned, my last question before I pass to the oversight, FEMA. You mentioned FEMA, and FEMA testified before the body. They're here to help harden the infrastructure. And if they're going to do that, what is that costing that we don't need to fund, that they're going to provide? Because I know that if you spend a penny, they'll reimburse you. I think if it's not at 90, it's at 100%. So I just want to make sure that the numbers are working this way, because if you got leaks, if they say it's FEMA covered, boom. If you show here $20 million in your budget, if you got the 20 million and you get reimbursed, then we kind of like break even here. I want to make sure that we're not going to try to figure out a way how to find you 42 when you don't need 42, because the governor was given an authorization of 50 million. And if she gets reimbursed and she helps you totally, that's federal money coming right back to the same pot that gave out. And there's no reason for us to sit here and say, we need to find you 42, and really maybe we only need to find you 10, or even less, or nothing at all but break even. And I just want you guys to think about it. If you don't have the complete answer for that, you can get it back to me, and I'll go ahead and pass off to our oversight chair, Speaker Terlaya, and followed by my vice chair, Senator Tidegree, and then I'll move along with the other senators.
Thank you,
Madam
Senator.
Speaker?
We'll chase that down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony today. Very much appreciated. It's very thorough. Could we just go back to the collections issue real quick? So $100 million less than FY22 in billings. So I know Ms. Hechinovi said that this is because of the system shutdown plus the change to the new EHR system, that's causing like a delay in billings. Do you expect to recoup then this $100 million loss during this fiscal year, or you're just going to wash that and go forward and try to improve?
No. What we're doing, the priority in the billing department is, because we have 90 days to bill the on-island payers, those are prioritized. We have 1 year to bill Medicare and Medicaid. So because we have more time for those, we don't rush those as much as we do for the private insurance. So those are the ones that we're really pushing through and getting the claims out. And we're actually just behind on maybe the last 30 days or so. So our billings have been keeping up. The problem with the implementation with the EHR is the charges are not all coming through. So we're concerned that we're not capturing all the charges, that just because of some interface issues here and there that we're seeing. But we definitely will bill everything that we can.
Is that strictly an issue for your billing department, or is that your consultant's issue, or who's handling that part, where you're seeing billings not coming through? Or
it's our billing department. So in our patient affairs department, we have a new section we created for revenue integrity that keeps an eye on the charges. So when billers or they see something missing, because based on the medical record there was a procedure done, and for example an x-ray is stated in the medical notes but they don't see the charge dropped on the bill, then that's when they would go in and investigate why that charge was not dropped. And so there are periodic There are times when, like radiology department, for example, will notice something is wrong with the interface and we need IT to come and look at it. So for a certain period of time, we may not have charges dropping. Of course, we're informed in billing, so they know to look out for those bills that may come across without charges for x-rays and what have you.
So you're relying on like the radiology department to notice it first, inform billing department, and then billing department calls IT?
Part of that, but sometimes we'll notice it just on our end alone that we're not noticing the charges are not dropping or batches are not coming across. So we're all keeping an eye every day on the movement, on the implementation of the EHR, because the charges are really our biggest concern.
So if the new HR system was implemented in October, we've already passed the 90-day period for a lot of the claims or a lot of the charges, right? And you're working on just the last 90 days worth, supposedly.
Well, even if there's a bill that comes through that may be missing charges or missing, we'll still bill it. We want to still get as much. If something is missing, a $25 charge or what, it's okay. We'll let it go, and we just want to get the bill in on time.
And so you intend to catch up on that 100 million?
Yes.
Okay. The Medicare, on your financial highlights, it shows that collections on Medicare is less than FY22 by a couple million, but the Medicaid is way up, so you're getting a good job in the reimbursements on the Medicaid.
Yes.
And the third-party payers is also lower. You mentioned, you were going kind of fast on this part, and you mentioned there was a domino effect. Can you just explain this decrease in Medicare and third-party payers?
So generally in all, with the issues we've been having on the EHR and the charges, like what I just discussed, it is going to go down into less bills going out, less revenue being captured, less bills, and then of course less going to be collected.
All right, okay, so it's not an issue with the insurance companies being cooperative or reimbursing what they're being charged?
Not entirely. We still have some issues with the payer, yes.
All right, and you're able to take care of that?
Yes.
All right. The you had a chart on appropriations, and then in the bottom you said appropriations not received. So 2.9 still pending for FY23.
Pending, yes.
That's normal,
Yes.
right? Okay. And then there's a 1 million still pending for FY20, and 865 for FY21. Do you expect to get those?
No.
You don't. Why not?
Well, I believe it was because the pharmaceutical funds our portion of it is based on how much is collected for GRT. And so if we don't reach that threshold to cover our appropriation, then we just don't get whatever.
So you're saying the appropriation level was too high based on the pharmaceutical revenue that actually came in?
Yes, that seems to be it.
Okay, well, that's a perfect transition then to this, what your budget is, right? So you're asking for 19 million more than FY23, and that's 19 million more than the governor's request was pretty much status quo for GMH.
Yes.
So that's 19 million more. 5 of that is from the general fund, but the rest looks like it's supposed to come from this pharmaceutical fund. And I overheard the OFB during our budget meeting say they don't expect to receive 33 million pharmaceutical fund for GMH, which is what you're basing your budget on. They are only thinking they might receive 20 million, and anyway, it might be less than what you're listing here as an expectation. And if that happens, what happens to your overall budget?
That's a very good question. Yeah, we've thought about that. If we don't, we have our expenses already projected at the 193 million. And it's pretty much what's happening right now when we don't have enough to cover. We sacrifice other areas. So for example, when a certain equipment or something breaks down, or the parking lot roof was falling down, that's an immediate need that we have to fund right away. So we have to go back to the budget and unfund other things that we just can't possibly fund because this urgent issue has come up.
If you are able to obtain or recapture some of that 100 million in lost revenues, would that make up for that shortage in pharmaceutical funds?
I'm sure it would help, yes.
In other words, you haven't budgeted that in yet, right?
No, we made the projections just based on our current,
Collections.
actually our patient census and the trends with how many patients are coming in, how many are inpatient and outpatient, and even the demographic of whether they're in Medicare or a private payer, and then we base it on those historical trends.
All right. And you said there's a cap on the reimbursement of Medicare. Can you just explain that again?
Because of our TEFRA status, Medicare only...
Your what status?
TEFRA, that's the Tax and Equity Reconciliation Act, Fiscal Responsibility Act. We are under that type of a payment module, and so they cap us. So if you come into the hospital, and you're in the emergency room and in the ICU, and your daily bill is $5,000, we only get from Medicare $1,500 per day. That's all they will pay us.
All right. Is this the same thing as the reimbursement rates? Medicare's, like, approved Medicare reimbursement for GMH is lower than some other
Yes,
places, right?
correct. It
So
is.
have you made any progress in, I know in past years they had done some reconciliation and were able to raise some of those reimbursement rates?
The rebates is what you're talking
Yes,
about
yes.
now? We received the rebates, the last time was 2016, 2017.
Yeah, I haven't heard any in a
Yeah,
while.
right, and we have to apply for it.
We have
And
not.
the rebates is based on patient discharges per the Medicare cost report for the prior year. So when we submit our Medicare cost report, that's when they analyze it, whether or not there's going to be a settlement, that we were underpaid or overpaid.
Yeah, but we do need to explore the rebasing again, and that is part of our strategic plan, is to seek the consultant to help us get the rebasing again, because it's already been 10 years, so they're paying us based on costs from 10 years ago, and of course,
Yes.
they're so high right now, so we
Yeah,
do need to explore
I
that.
thought that was done on an ongoing basis by
No.
GMH as part of its strategy.
No.
Okay, so you talked about outsourcing bad debt collections. Could you just explain that? I know there was a controversial contract not too long ago that's ended now. I know you've since hired 2 attorneys. Are they not doing the collections for you?
It's part of our cleanup of the debt of our aging accounts, and once we get a good number on what those self-pay patients are, we would think it would be more efficient just to hand them off to a collection agency and have them collect those very difficult, hard-to-collect accounts.
All right, so you've made no special requests for CIP projects. I think according to what you've submitted in your budget packet, there are CIP projects, and Mr. Kando explained, ongoing and projected for the upcoming years, but you plan to fund those all out of either your revenue or grants or just the regular operating budget, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then this alternate care site, it's the first I've heard that this is like I know there's been an issue that we're incurring costs, but it's the first I've heard that GMH is going to be the one to lead building an alternate care site, and I see it's a FEMA PA grant. They are going to fund the 3.9 million?
During COVID and working with FEMA, we were able to submit a proposal, a grant proposal for the SNF, a skilled nursing facility, to be a alternate care site as a part of COVID-19. Of course, we've actually been using the skilled nursing facility for many years as an alternate care site for all hazards, all emergency responses. But this one was specific to COVID, and it went through revisions, and it finally ended up on a non-acute care model. So the reimbursement that we're expecting, that FEMA is looking to reimburse us, is for costs incurred for various medical equipment that we had procured in support of the alternate care site.
SNF.
If I
So-
may.
And then, so
Madam
that other
Speaker.
one that you discussed about building a new alternate care site for 3.9 million, is that different? Or
No.
that's-
What happened, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, if I may explain, when we initially submitted to FEMA that public assistance application for SNF to be converted to an alternate care site for COVID, it was tagged at $15 million. and we got approved by FEMA. Unfortunately, we couldn't move fast enough to bid for a contractor to do an RFP, bid for a contractor to then convert that. And so therefore, it went over a year. FEMA then informed us that because their mindset was it was supposed to be an immediate transformation of that skilled nursing facility to be an alternate care site, we did not act on it immediately because we were still dealing with COVID. We couldn't get a contractor. We didn't do an RFP. So therefore, we rescoped it, and then they dropped it down to 3.9 million.
Okay, thank you. In FY23 budget, there was a special line item for 5 million for specialty doctors. Was that utilized to help recruit specialty doctors?
We're still waiting for the audited, it was conditioned on the audited surplus number, and the audit hasn't come out yet, so we're still waiting for that.
So they haven't given it to you? And are there any areas that CMS has said need to be addressed that we should know about here?
A lot of the citations that CMS in their last visit were primarily the care that, because they came because of complaints. Some individuals made a complaint with regards to I think, admission and transfer. And I can't remember the details of all the citations, and I was on leave, so do you want to expand a little bit more on it, Dr. Prince?
So there was, thank you, Madam Chair. So there was some complaints that were about whether or not wounds were developed in the hospital setting, and because if it is in the hospital setting, CMS will not pay us for that. And it was deemed that that complaint was unsubstantiated. And there were also some other complaints based on food quality that was given to patients, and that was also unsubstantiated. In regards to other CMS findings, there were some on infection control. There were some on, in regards to nursing, and also with our medical staff compliance. And that is, and we have already given our corrective actions, and they were approved.
All right, thank you. In the FY23 budget, there was also a provision for 15 million from the audited surplus fund for hospital capital improvement funds, including the labor and delivery ward that was authorized in Public Law 3573 several years ago. We saw in an audit that money was never used from the original law. So I don't know, they put 15 million more last year we put in the budget for additional capital improvement projects. So you've not received that either. Have you used any of the money previously authorized for the labor and delivery ward?
We had DOI compact impact funds that were actually to fund the FF&E package of what that original family birthing center was going to be, and so that was about at least $3 million that we procured for the L&D, the OB ward, and nursery. A little on pediatrics, but mostly those three units on the second floor. And so, we expended those funds. We bought them new medical equipment that they needed for their critical infrastructure.
If I may add also to that, based on my recollection, the requirement for that was also to get upfront funding from a financial institution. And when we did the RFP or the bidding, we didn't get any. And so we could not proceed any further with it.
All right. Okay, so this appropriation is still pending. The 15 million from in the FY23 budget from FY22 unaudited, or
correct, ma'am.
Hopefully soon audited, right?
Right. It's depending on the audit.
Do you just two more questions. I know my colleagues are impatient, but the fees. So you've been increasing fees, and you outlined today especially that room and board increase, and that's been covered in the news. Do you find that, I know you based it on, you said a Medicaid report, 2019 or something, but you find that to be reasonable? You find that the insurance companies will not object and that the patients are going to be able to pay that?
We did have a public hearing a couple of weeks ago on the rates, and most of the insurance companies did attend. There was only written testimony that was submitted a few days later, and all of them had asked for reconsideration, which we expected. They don't want the rates to go up. But we feel that the rates are reasonable because they're based on FY19. We just wanted it to be fair. If we did base it on FY22, I mean, the rates would be unattainable, really. Nobody would be able to afford
Much
them.
higher.
Yeah, and we also did a comparison to the rates charged at GRMC and also to CHCC and Saipan to make sure that we were at least on par with their rates as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And you expect those to come to the legislature when you're done with your process?
Yes, we're waiting
All
for
right.
our board to approve it, and then the whole packet will be sent to the legislature.
All right, and then so my final question is just this, seeking this designation as, qualifying employer so we can attract additional medical staff, and the critical access hospital, are you just beginning that, or how soon do you expect we can really fully apply for those designations? Just
Speaker.
beginning?
Right, we're just beginning that, but those are options that can help us, definitely.
All right, are you seriously going to pursue those?
What was that?
Are you going to seriously pursue those, or
Absolutely.
we're thinking like in the future? Right now?
Seriously pursuing it as long as I'm in this position.
Okay, all right, thank you again, Jesus Masi. And thank you for all your work, of course, and congratulations again to all of those who retired this year, many of them serving over 30 years, one serving over 40 years in the hospital. Jesus Masi to all of your staff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Oversight Chair of the hospital. I do have some questions with regards to the Department of Corrections. You collect $3.3 million is what you estimated to project, actually collect in FY24? Is that a project? Okay, but what is the reality on the service that you provide them? Is it exceeded that amount of 3.3?
How we charge the Department of Corrections, so we have all of their expenses are charged to a GL account, including all their personnel costs, all of the supplies and equipment or stuff that we buy for them, and we turn around and bill that to them. So whatever costs we incur for DOC is turned around and billed to them. So it is 100% paid back to us.
Right, and in FY22, how much billing did you bill them, and how much did you get from DOC?
If I can also interject, it's not just the operation of the on-site clinics, but when inmates come into the hospital as inpatient, those we bill also. We can
Yep.
send them the invoices.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yep, so I'm just trying to see where the gap is here, because I'm hearing that GMH does not receive the full amount whenever they have, send the billing over to DOC, that sometimes you don't get those paid. So is that true to form?
That was prior to 2019. There was a problem getting the payment, but currently we do. We receive it every
Okay.
month, yes.
So in FY22, not a problem?
Not a problem.
Okay, and then it's anticipated about 3.3 million?
Yes.
Okay, the other question I have is regarding the ARP funding. Anticipated, you have about 1.5 million left in the ARP funding. I might have missed it, but do you have any plans of utilizing that funding? It has to be expended by the end of December of FY24 or the year 24. So you have about 1.5 million.
Is that from the slides, ma'am?
Actually, from the ARP funding that the legislature receives coming from the governor's office, they give us a report to show us how much has been expended. And I'm showing that there is still $1.5 million that you guys have. It's been given to you. Are you from, you're not aware of that, huh? Oh, well. Allow me to
Get it?
allow me to send you the report if you haven't received it, but yeah, there's 1.5 million in there.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. You can actually ask BBMR because they're the one that provides us that report. So I'm sure you can use that money right away. You said that you're having issues with the increase of the 22% pay increase. You mentioned earlier that it's hard to meet your goals because of this increase. Can you kind of explain?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Earlier you mentioned something about difficulty, making,
Recruiting?
yeah, the not recruiting, but the 22% pay increase that was given to the hospital, and that you are having difficulty in, reaching your goals in paying out because of this. You mentioned that earlier? Oh, maybe I might be mistaken because now the aircon sound has been gone. It's hard to hear, so now we're clearly hearing much better. But are you having any issues paying out the 22% pay increase?
We are paying it. We are paying it, and we're also receiving about $300,000 every pay period from DOA to
pay
the GPP. Yes.
Okay, well then you're a lot better off than DOE, that's for sure. Okay, the other question I have is, do you have any, well, that's kind of ridiculous, but I will have to ask, do you have any lapses anticipated?
No, ma'am.
No, I didn't think so. Have you had lapses in FY22?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Overtime, I'm noticing your overtime. What are you doing to try to, overtime is so much more expensive than regular salary, so what are you doing to offset that?
We are enforcing the policy in terms of those who are exempt. They're not eligible, but they need to then submit prior authorization because, the hospital is owed. And, we do have people that have to stay back, FM especially. Even the manager himself responds to the calls that we need to get this thing done, we need to get this fixed. When I went up to ER and it's pretty warm, I called him that we need to get split units installed into the emergency room, and that was like a Friday afternoon. And so, those are circumstances that are not predictable, but they respond. And so we are enforcing the compensation policy that we have in place.
Okay, keeping an eye on that one, it's important. On the unclassified positions that you have, here it says 49 positions. Are any of those unclassified positions vacant right now?
I don't have the listing in front of me of what you have. Is that the staffing pattern?
Yes, yes, it
in our
is.
budget? Okay. If you give me a minute to take a look at it.
Okay, well, I'll have one of your staff look at that, and I'll continue on so we don't delay this any longer. Now, one of the biggest concerns I have, and I've always had a passion for, looking at ways to protect our, when it comes to cybersecurity. And of course, we had an issue at the hospital, not only the hospital, but, it happened at GCC, it happened at University of Guam. And it's not going to stop. You're going to see more people hacking. I mean, we had a bank issue recently, of a hacking there. So I did attend the meeting with a couple of my colleagues regarding what really happened during that time. I'm also aware that IT, the government of Guam has sent over somebody from IT to kind of help the hospital because, this is a huge, huge problem. And I don't know how much funding you're putting into upgrading, but you have here other FF and E purchases. This is on the capital improvement projects that you have here. And I kind of wish you had put the prices of, or how much the estimated costs for all these ongoing CIP in the pipeline, how much it's going to cost. It'd be very helpful if you can provide that to us, the cost of these projects.
We've actually captured those costs in our 5-year CIP plan, which is attached to our new strategic plan. All the useful life, the age of the existing, the actual estimated cost for all of those. So those that have been completed, those are also showing some of those in the calendar year 2023.
Speak into the mic again, I'm sorry, I can't yeah. So the one that you have here, the ongoing CIP and in the pipeline, you have a total cost of all this?
We can make sure that we can give you an accurate figure on that. We have those actual costs.
I think it's very important, so we can see how far you are and what's really needed that's important, and especially when it comes down to the infrastructure, the IT network system infrastructure upgrade in particular. What is the cost for this particular section?
Senator, if you can look at page 23 of the PowerPoint slides, it does show there in terms of the hospital information and communications technology infrastructure upgrade for fiscal year 2024, we're looking at 16.2 million.
Yep, I have that page 23, but no, I don't have
Slide 23, this is the one.
No, I don't have that. Do I
Fiscal year 2024 equipment and CIP funding requirements.
She said 23. 23, all I have is this right
Sorry,
here.
it's 21.
Oh, 21.
My eyes
thank
are...
you. No worries, no worries.
My apologies.
Okay, so we're looking at the communications technology infrastructure upgrade. Is that the one that you're talking about? Okay, and you're looking at this project alone at 16,200,000? Oh, after you're completed, it'll be 79.5, yeah, because you're looking at what it's going to cost. Well, in FY23, did you have the 16.6 million in FY23 to cover this? No? Okay, well, that's scratched out. And then now the 16.2 million, where's that money? Where's that coming from? You got any federal grants down the pipeline or FEMA money or?
We're searching for federal grants opportunity, yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Well, this, I can't stress what happened to the hospital when you had a breach. This is not just, the power going down. This is important, technology that helps doctors determine what blood type a particular, patient has or what the medication that's needed. And, technology has helped speed up this process. And for you to just say, okay, we didn't have any money in FY23, now, and that's when we had this problem, and then you are not even, having a plan for something like this, it's very discouraging. It's scary for anybody to go up to Guam Memorial Hospital knowing that it already had a breach in cybersecurity.
If I may correct, it wasn't a breach. Based on the code of federal regulations, we did not, upon the investigation of that IT, there was no reasonable evidence that there was a breach in terms of acquisition, access of personnel, protected health information. So there wasn't, but there was. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely, there was a breach.
Vulnerable, and so
there was. For you to say there was not a breach is outright not true. There was a breach, regardless. It was somebody in your employment.
An unauthorized access.
Yeah, in your employment. That's a breach. Regardless if it comes from somebody in another country, it's still a breach. Lillian, I can't stress how important this is. If you looked at, anybody can go online and look at other hospitals that have been hijacked by cybersecurity and held hostage, paying in millions of dollars to release them. This is a huge issue. Mm-hmm. Cybersecurity is one of the. I'm very happy to hear that IT, is actually helping you guys. This might cover some of the costs. You might want to look at tagging on with IT at the government of Guam. I mean, they have the equipment, they have the security all in place right now. There's, because you're not an online agency, I do not know why IT is not helping people like Guam Memorial Hospital or other areas like the University of Guam or GCC that's already been hacked.
Senator, the Office of Technology, led by Frank Lujan, are directly assisting us. We've been working with them since that shutdown and restoration. And they've been working, he's been working to actually pull equipment, IT equipment from other GovGuam agencies in the way of switches and servers that have made a huge difference to that restoration effort. And again, I reiterate, firewall, that's why we were able to bring in new firewalls. So that help has been tremendous. And I reiterate, based on the investigation, our lawyers were involved. The CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, was involved in assessing what transpired. And I reiterate what Lillian stated, there was no breach.
There was a breach, but do you have an MOU in place with the IT department, with the hospital and the OT? Do you have an MOU in place?
We requested by memo, an official request for the governor to allow Frank to be with us and help us out. And so he's been coming regularly. He's been on site.
In an MOU or?
It's not an MOU, it's a memorandum that we
Okay.
requested and was officially approved by the governor.
Okay. The other question I have, and then we'll go to the employees on the unclassified, but does the Guam Memorial Hospital Board approve your budget before you come and present it to us? Are they involved?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
They are involved, they are engaged in this
Okay.
process.
And then the last question I had was the 49 unclassified positions. Are any of those unclassified positions vacant currently?
The question is the 49 positions that are vacant?
Yeah, that I have, the sheet that's prepared for by our Office of OFB, it's showing here unclassified was 49 in FY23. And then going into FY24, it's also requested 49. So my question is, are any of these unclassified positions are vacant right now?
I have to look into it,
Okay.
Senator. I don't have
Yeah.
the data right now, but I will
Appreciate
certainly
that.
look into it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and then let our chair notify our chair on that, and as well as myself.
Yes, ma'am.
As
I
the
will.
vice chair, I'd appreciate to find out that
All right,
information.
thank you.
Okay, and to all the employees at the Guam Memorial Hospital, and what you've been through with the typhoon, COVID, and everything else under the sky. I'd like to thank you for all your dedication and hard work. And I hope that, Lillian, you continue to keep us in the loop with regards to any progress on the meetings for a new hospital, the building of a new hospital. I haven't heard anything about any meetings updated. We passed legislation to have this, and
We haven't had any meetings. at least that
I don't know why
I
not.
haven't.
I really don't know why not. We worked very hard to try and be a part of this, the building of a new hospital, which is desperately, desperately needed.
Right.
We also need to look at what kind of funding we have to prepare our current hospital, because I was told during the typhoon, and looking at your, told during the typhoon that it was raining in the hospital, flooding in many of the areas, and that when I looked at your report here on what has been completed, capital improvement, recently completed projects, I'm seeing roof repair coating, roof coating, structural architectural package completed for D-wing, A-wing, D-wing, D and E. These are all completed. But yet, the hospital was still flooded during the typhoon.
That's right, Senator. So it's the roof and envelope that we need to upgrade. We've worked on the roof. The roof for A, B, D, and E wings were not leaking. They did their job during that typhoon.
So where did it leak?
They were leaking in areas where we were having drainage issues. Even on in the vicinity of the Z wing, which we're trying to demolish on the second floor, there are certain drains that were covered during the typhoon by debris, like solar panels that had been knocked off of our roof. They were covering the drains, and that's what was leaking into our main corridor, and then down the one of our main corridors past the dietary, like a river. And so we couldn't actually go out there during the typhoon and actually remove the debris because the winds were so strong.
Okay, well, I greatly appreciate you really paying attention to that particular situation, because we are anticipating to have, of course, according to FEMA, additional typhoons. We're in typhoon season. It just started. We're starting to have it. So whatever you're going to do right now, I think it needs to be done now to prepare in case another typhoon comes, because we don't want to see people, you know, in the middle of the hospital being rained on during a typhoon. So please look into that. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. Senator Lujan, sir, and you'll be followed by Senator Fisher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, panel. Thank you very much for being here this morning, and thank you very much for all that you do and staff at, of course, GMH for everything that you do. And if I didn't say that, Dr. Princess will be on me. But thank you very much for that. Just a couple questions here in regards to the ER admissions here. In the first 7 months of the fiscal year from October 2022 to May 2023, you've had 12,065 patients that were seen, and of that, 26% or 3,183 were admitted, right? Okay, and that's just the first 7 months. So it's safe to assume that by the end of the fiscal year, those numbers will double, right? Okay, at 26%. Of the 12,065 at this point, what are the percentage of patients that are seen that come in uninsured, that have no form of insurance at all? Roughly.
I'm going to yield to you, Kat.
It's about 15 to 20%.
15 to 20%.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that reflective on the admissions as well from ER at 26%, or the 3,000 at about 15 around?
Yeah. It's been pretty consistent throughout
Okay.
the years
Okay.
in our payer mix of how many are
Okay.
actually self-pay.
Okay, and that's a combination of COFA, just local folks not insured,
Yeah,
or folks coming?
across-
Okay,
across the
okay,
board.
Okay. And you were saying earlier too that you're seeing a lot of sicker patients coming in. So a lot of folks who, again, are not insured use the ER as their primary care facility. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
May I add on to that?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, so honestly, post-typhoon and actually post-pandemic, patients were delaying care in their primary care. So this was huge for all of us. I mean, I see Dr. Lozama back there, and he's one of our hospitalists and a great one at that. And honestly, it is becoming more and more complex of more chronic cases that have more acute problems than ever has been seen before. Also, younger patients becoming more chronic. And that is taxing the financial system of the government, federal and local in itself.
Sure, okay. And again, it's just first 7 months, and this number will double, of course, for sure, with that. And the reason why I ask this, because I know there's been conversation, I know that the government of Guam is looking at self-insuring. How do you folks feel about that? I mean, because I've been looking at these numbers and I'm asking you the numbers in regards to uninsured patients and, of course, the capture rate, right, in regards to collections. And I'm just not confident in Gov Guam self-insuring and whether they will have a bigger capture rate aside from, again, the non-payers, and whether or not the Gov Guam self-insuring will have even a bigger capture rate. And I think these numbers will probably even be higher
Well,
based on that?
to address the self-pay issue, we really try to get them signed up for Medicaid. A lot of them don't know how to do it, or they
Sure,
don't even
sure.
understand it's there. So
Sure.
just giving them the form, our social workers even help them get all the documentation together, so at least they can get something as opposed to no coverage at all.
Okay, okay. But how do you feel about, again, the conversation that Gov Guam is moving towards self-insuring?
I think that's just mainly for the employees in Gov Guam.
Yeah, but still, I mean, Gov Guam self-insuring? Which pot? Which pot is it going to come from?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, because these numbers are going to rise. I'm just saying the capture rate, I mean, if Gov Guam is going to self-insure, I don't think the doctors are going to be very happy about that. No comment, Dr. Prince.
You know, honestly, Senator Luan, healthcare economics is complicated.
Yeah.
I'll just say it as that. You know, there's now new master's degrees in healthcare economics all across the nation. And why? Because it's complicated. Yuka can actually attest to this. It's not like in the outside sector, like Port Authority, for example. Guam Memorial Hospital, GRMC, name the hospital, it is complicated. It is complex. But what we cannot do is skirt taking care of our patients to the best of our abilities and supporting our providers and our nurses, our physicians, our support staff, our housekeeping, our FM. Everybody has to be supported. And that is where the issues come in.
Yeah, and that's where I'm coming from as well. I mean, it's great if we had this Gov Guam big pot, you know, this rainbow continues to shine in this big pot, and yeah, that's fantastic. But that's what I'm worried about. We move towards that, although it may be just for Gov Guam employees, that, yeah, I don't think it's going to be, you know, those problems are just going to be exacerbated even more, and we probably don't need a master's degree on medical care economics to be able to know that, Anyway, one last question, actually. Read about net payroll. Where are we at with that? I mean, is the hospital making full payroll, gross payroll with that? And,
Yes, we are.
Okay, so we're not behind with anybody and
No.
all that? Okay. So anyone that needs to retire can retire on time and all that?
Yes.
And that, okay.
They should.
Okay, great. Anyway, thank you very much, Mrs. Chair. Yeah, and like I said, I'm very concerned about Gov Guam self-insurance. And so we'll be keeping an eye on that. And yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Fisher, do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
I do. Thank you very much, and good morning. This is gonna be kind of slap shot, but I understand that visiting hours are suspended at the hospital. Is that true?
We just lifted the suspension as of Monday.
I'm
We
sorry.
lifted the suspension. We're back to normal visitation.
Oh, good.
You know, it was just in effect Monday.
Excellent. I assume that you imposed the restriction because of the typhoon and,
Well, that and COVID primarily
COVID.
to protect the patients, the public, and the staff.
okay. So I'm sure many people are going to be happy to hear that. So
Sure.
yeah, so thank you for that. You had mentioned earlier about the debt collection. I noticed that in this fiscal year, you're on track at about 53% collection. And you want to outsource your debt collection, is that correct?
Eventually, when we have and there's so many accounts, and that's probably the problem, is we only have 3 people in collections right now. If we have very difficult, hard to collect accounts that are really old, we think it would be just more efficient to outsource that and give it to a collection agency. We pay them a fee to collect those instead of having to hire more people to get on the phone and call all these people.
Okay, I know that you had, I know there was some sort of a contractual hiccup earlier in the year involving debt collection. Could you explain that? There was a provider that was,
So the contractor was actually not doing collections. We still were. They were consulting us on improving revenue cycle management in the hospital.
on improving what?
The revenue cycle
Okay,
management, the whole billing, collection, coding, all of those processes.
what was the name of that company?
MedHealth,
MedHealth? Are they still doing that?
no.
Why was the contract either terminated or suspended or?
The contract was for 1 year, and they provided a variety of consulting services to us. A little after they started, we actually hired somebody with extensive revenue cycle management experience who worked alongside of them, and now she's actually in charge of revenue cycle. And then we just got to the point where we felt we could continue the work, and so we ended the contract.
Okay, and from your statement, do I understand that MedHealth, the organization, did not have the requisite expertise to provide the revenue?
They did. They had the requisite expertise, but they did help us a lot with implementing our new bill scrubber. We needed some consulting services for that when we had the back and forth with the vendor. They helped us set up our revenue integrity department, and so we were able to set up a separate section within the billing to monitor charges, which we didn't have before. They helped us understand some of the issues we were having with our Medicare billing. So it just got to the point where we felt like they've done enough and we want to take it over. The contract was never meant to be in perpetuity. It really did have an end date, and so when we felt we were at that point where we could cut it off, we did.
Okay. Do you know who the principal officers are or were in MedHealth?
We know Mr. Glenn Hermes
Glenn
was the CEO.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Glenn Hermes or Hermie. He was the CEO that we were communicating with.
Glenn Herman?
Hermes, Hermes, I believe is his last name.
Okay, do you recall the names or identities of any of the other officers at MedHealth?
No, we didn't meet the officers, we only met him. Who we met were the staff, the consultants that were.
There is, I think Mr. Rene Ramos,
Rene Ramos?
and there's one more, I just don't remember the name right now.
Okay. The first gentleman you named, Hermes?
Glenn.
Glenn, was he on island?
He came on island a couple of times and we met with him in person.
Okay, so
Yes.
Was MedHealth an off-island company or is it a Guam?
That's our understanding, was that they were from off island. They were based off island.
Okay, and I know that you said that you had spoken to him at least a couple times. I suppose he was a signatory on the contract. Were you dealing with anyone else on island about that?
Not really. Mr. Rene Ramos came to the first meeting that we had, but after that, I don't think we had any other meetings with them. It's been primarily Mr. Glenn Hermes.
Understood. When you came into this contract, was that pursuant to a request for proposal?
We completed the RFP, yes.
And did the RFP arise sui generis? Did the RFP, the idea for the contract, what was its origin? Was it the hospital or did Rene Ramos or Mr. Hermes, did they propose that to you?
I guess they knew that they knew that we were challenged with our collections.
Okay.
And so, yes, they initially mentioned that, they can, but I said we need to go through the RFP.
I'm sorry?
We need to go through the RFP procurement process, was what I had said. We just have to go through that process. And we did. We submitted everything to the AG's office.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. How many proposers participated in the RFP?
Only one submitted.
Only one?
Only
Was
one
it,
proposal.
was that MedHealth?
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we had two.
Oh, okay.
We had two.
Who was the second? You can answer that.
I can't even remember the name.
Okay, yeah, okay.
It was a local company.
And a fundamental question, how much was the contract worth?
We paid them 12% of collections every month over 7.2 million.
Okay, the first 7.2 went to the hospital. Thereafter, 12 cents out of every dollar went with
Yes,
MedHealth?
yes,
Okay.
correct.
And did you require MedHealth, well, I'm sure you did, require them to report to you how much they were collecting over and above the 7.2?
Yes, we tracked that.
Having tracked that, do you recall how much did MedHealth actually make on the contract?
About $4 million.
$4 million? And the contract was not quite for a year.
It was a year and a half almost.
Oh, a year and a half, okay.
A year and 5 months, I think.
Do you think that, did you get a fair return on your investment?
We did have increased collections at that time. They really helped push a lot of the Medicare. We had so many issues with Medicare, so that was
Okay.
where they really helped us a lot with the Medicare claims.
Okay, thank you. I want to move on. Medicare, Centers for Medicare, Medicaid, CMS, right? Are they the ones who are the authority or the entity that can grant rebasing?
The question, if I may repeat, are they the ones in authority to grant
Yeah,
the settlement?
Yeah, I don't
We
know
work
what-
with the
I don't know what the-
consultant.
I don't know what the verb is. Award it or give it to you, the rebasing?
They're the ones who award us the settlement, the
Okay.
rebasing settlement. It's Medicare.
Okay.
CMS.
CMS.
All right. If they're rebasing, there must be a base. So what is the base right now?
It's based on FY 2014 costs.
Okay. And do you know, is it fair to think of it as how much you get per bed per day?
Yes,
Okay.
per day. Per
So the amount of money that you will get from Medicare, Medicaid per bed per day is based on 2014 figures?
Yes, but it is adjusted. There's a market basket index, like CPI, adjusted every month. It's about 1 to 1.5%. It will go up every year.
Okay.
It's not much.
So how much does a hospital get per day per bed from Medicare, Medicaid, occupied bed?
That exact number, I would have to get back to you because it just depends on the census on that day. It changes every day. Sometimes we have a different mix of patients in the hospital. They're all self-pay, Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance.
Okay. But the idea behind rebasing is you will get more money from Medicaid, Medicare per bed or per patient?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it was based, and I understand it fluctuates, and you want it to fluctuate at a higher level, I suppose. Is that correct?
Yes, based on more current costs.
Okay, what's taking so long to rebase?
We do need to get a consultant because this is something that needs to go through CMS.
Okay.
And it was done earlier, and that's exactly how they did it, and it was successful. We'd like to follow the same path because we want to get the same outcome that what happened about 8 years ago when it was successfully rebased.
Well, this sounds like one of those things you're going to want a DC firm to do. Why don't you put out an RFP in the Washington Post or something? I'm sure there are a lot of sharks in the water for this, right?
We've just started discussing what are we going to do going forward on that. But the rebasing is definitely something we need to do. The mechanism and the way we're going to do it, we haven't fully discussed that yet.
Okay. Your hospital, compared to other hospitals of similar size around the nation, how are you guys doing on revenue and expenditure? Are you similar to other hospitals of the same size?
I am not too sure. I've never really compared us to other hospitals because we're just a very different, we're a very different hospital. We're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and we have a different demographic, different types of patients that present to us, so it's hard to compare. But in what I have learned that happening in other hospitals is the costs have been extraordinary, and they have the same, staffing is another issue. The really big healthcare systems, I've heard, I mean, because they're a lot bigger, I mean, they're spending $500 million a year on travel nurses. And, you know, here we are thinking we spent a lot, but because they're so much bigger, of course, their scale is a lot larger. But they are really experiencing the same issues that we are as far as staffing and expenses are concerned.
Okay, the reason I was hoping to drill down more on the money side, you know, revenue and outlays and so forth, because I was wondering if there are any outside management teams like Humana or Blue Cross Blue Shield or St. Mary's or that have expressed or would be interested in taking over the management of the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority.
We haven't asked, so.
Yeah, because, I'm not sure they would based on, you know, if you guys are $42 or $42 million in the hole, I don't know that anybody would. But I don't know, you might want to, I know you guys are the experts, so you might want to think about whether or not that's practical. Okay, continuing my jumping around here. Ms. Posada, do you have an opinion on where the new hospital should be constructed?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry, I was busy writing notes.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sure you're aware, well, of course you're aware of the controversy surrounding the potentiality of a new hospital. Do you have an opinion on where it should be located for the welfare of the community?
Sure, for the island, for the welfare of the island. Central location is what my opinion is, what my preference is. It's easier access if we want to make, you know, Medicare, hospital services more accessible and available. A central part of the island is where I prefer.
Okay, so you're not necessarily, you know, it's the whole Eagles Field, I'm sure you're very familiar with that, the idea of putting it in Manilao and so forth. So it sounds like you're not necessarily married to the idea that it must be at Eagles Field in Manilao.
I like Eagles Field, I like that, but you know, if we've lost the opportunity, so therefore I still would like to see it located centrally.
Would it be practical to put it in this? Would it be practical to put it in the same location where you are today?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
There's just no space. We cannot even expand. There's problem with parking right now, and to build a hospital where we are right now, it's a disruption to the services. Really pure disruption.
Yeah,
I know we're going to get complaints from patients that it's just not at all, you know, feasible. It's going to be too noisy. People are not going to be able to park. Now that we've opened up the visitation, you know, families are going to complain they can't find parking. And so it is not at all practical, nor is it reasonable.
Okay. Well, that's...
Thank you, though, for the question.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Okay, looks like, as you just observed, Eagles Field is off the table. Have you been thinking about any other locations?
Well, for my preference, it really should be near University of Guam, so that we can make it affiliated and hopefully in the future it can become a teaching hospital.
Yeah.
You know, that will help bring in some medical students, nursing students, and other allied health professionals. So research is another thing that I think we need to pursue. But you know, looking far ahead, but definitely.
Well, I think that's visionary. I agree with you. A teaching hospital would be wonderful for the entire area. Does the University of Guam, do they have space?
Just from what I'm looking, there is space. There's an undeveloped area. The Dean Circle, and I know that those buildings there, I think I've had some issues with either asbestos. Quite a bit of those structures have been already demolished. The College of Agriculture has a really big area, you know, that very big parking space. So I think they do have, you know, land.
Sufficient space up there?
Sufficient space.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
not
that's-
an engineer and I'm not a,
Well, no, that sounds terrific. The infrastructure's already up there, the water, the sewage, everything else. I don't know either, but that seems like a very good observation to me. Maybe you could share that with the boss, see what she thinks.
I will.
What, am I done? Okay, I'm going to hurry it up. Do you have any outstanding settlements in, litigation that is coming up? In other words, like you report to Deloitte and Touche. Do you anticipate large settlements?
It's the ENY is who we're doing our finance audit, and so we're still going through that process. The ENY is the one that is doing our audit for fiscal year 2022 finance.
Okay,
And
but
so
you don't see anything big on the horizon right now?
we still have some listing of some litigations.
Nothing that was, we have a reserve on our financial statements of about $500,000 for any
Okay.
large contingencies, and according to the auditors, it looks like that's going to be sufficient to cover anything coming up in the future.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask you, I'm referring to page 6 of the handout, I guess it was your slides. It's entitled Fiscal Year 2024 GMHA Budget Request. Contractual total is $41,482,000. When you say contractual expenses, what do you mean by that?
We put our physicians that we contract, they're in there. That's a
Okay.
big part of it. The travel nurses are in there, and then any other contractual services we have for like the copier machines, things like that.
Is the contractual expenses for this fiscal year 24, are they higher than they were for fiscal year 23?
Yes.
How much?
I think it was 4
$4
million.
Would, if we don't need the travel nurses anymore, shouldn't that contractual amount be declining?
We still have the travel nurses. We still anticipate we have had the goal of getting the travel nurses off of our expenses since, I think, 2021 or so. It's been on our to-do list, but it's really been impossible to do it when we have nurses leaving. The turnover is just, and we try to do as much as we can to keep them, increase their pay, offer them signing bonuses, all these things, but they still find reasons to leave. Yeah, there's a lot of competition for them, and so we will still need the travel nurses in order to take care of the many patients that we have.
Is there any way, I'm going to betray my ignorance here, but is there any way to encourage H1 workers to come in?
We are looking into that too. In fact, we just started a task force to see how we can then recruit from the foreign countries, primarily Philippines, because we have recruited, we have worked with them, and we've recruited nurses from that country.
I think is it an H1? I think so, right? The visa?
H1B, or we can just go ahead and go with the visa.
Okay.
So, but it's H1B.
Is anybody doing that work? Is the Attorney General's office doing that work for you?
No, we're doing it in-house.
Do you feel like you have the requisite expertise in-house to push it forward?
We do, but we're also looking for an immigration counsel, someone who is, an expert in immigration.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then I also noticed that for fiscal year miscellaneous, $664,000. What is miscellaneous?
Miscellaneous is like our, if I'm not mistaken, it is like our fees that we pay for certain things. I think for training, I can get you the specifics later, I can be more precise, but it really is kind of whatever doesn't fit in the other categories, but mostly I think it was for fees.
Okay. But you are tracking You are tracking those expenditures, I assume.
I'm sorry?
You're tracking those expenditures, I assume.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Continue, or just staying on page 6, I noticed that for the fiscal year 24, your fringe benefits are broken out separately for medical and dental and overtime. Fringe benefits of $20 million. What are fringe benefits?
Retirement.
Okay, so that's all retirement?
Yes, mostly retirement, yep.
Okay, is there anything other than retirement?
The Medicare tax we have to pay for the employees. I think the retirement insurance for the employees.
Okay.
And life insurance for the employees as well.
Okay, and page 11, please. You've got, and I'm looking at the category miscellaneous. If I compare the actual miscellaneous for fiscal year 22, I get 23 million, but now it's dropped to 700,000. What's that about?
Yeah, so in 2021 and 2022, we actually lumped all of our expenses for COVID related that we were going to use against all the grant money that we got into miscellaneous, so we could track it. And so that's why it's lumped into here for 2021 and 2022.
Okay, so that money is drying up.
Yeah, these are the expenses from those years. So yes, we've already spent the COVID money that we have received.
Okay. So for fiscal year 25, it'll probably look a little grimmer because the federal money is gone?
Absolutely, yes. And we've all been talking about it, that there will be no more federal assistance for COVID because the pandemic was winding down. Now it's officially over.
So no more money? No more money from Uncle Sam?
Not for COVID, anyway.
Anyway,
Yeah.
okay.
Although
Right.
the expenses are still there, it did not go back to pre-pandemic. Did not.
Grant. Okay, and now I'm going to go on to page 13, and I'm going to wrap it up because Senator, I didn't wrap it up yet. I said we're going to page 13. Yeah, I'm getting some serious stink eye from this guy. Gross revenues, that first line, I've just did, this is back of the envelope stuff, but as of today, or May 31st, gross revenues were 156.5 million, and that's 8 months, so that's 19.5 million per month, which means that gross revenues, just as a projection, using your collection so far, are on track for about 234 million. How did I get at that number? Because I divided 156 by 8. There's 8 months have elapsed. That comes to 19.5 million per month. 12 months in the year, 19.5 times 12 is 234 million. Again, that's just back of the envelope, but do you have a comment on that? Because your projected revenues are significantly less
Lower,
than
yes.
234.
So our gross revenues is really all the charges. So it's a good way to measure like volume within the hospital, how we're charging. But when we actually recognize the revenue, it's never the gross. So for example, as I talked about Medicaid and Medicare earlier, we only get $1,500 a day. So even if all these gross charges go out, we do not realize 100% of this. So we have to net it down to what we call the net patient revenue after we adjust it for contractual allowances and for bad debt that will not be collected.
Okay, but
which
so
is
far,
76.
okay, I'm completely at sea right now. So far, you have collected 156 million.
No, that's gross revenues that we have, that's on the books. So when a patient comes in and they get an x-ray, they get a medication, all these charges start to drop on their bill. That's the gross bill.
The gross, okay, now I get it. And the net is actually the dollars that came in the door.
Is what we expect to collect, yes.
Okay. All right. So I don't, thank you, Senator San Augustine. I appreciate it. And thank you all for answering my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Canasta, do you have any questions or comments for the panel? And you'll be followed by Senator Duenas.
Hopefully, good afternoon, or still good morning, panel. We've certainly heard a lot of conversation. So I don't really have much questions. I think they've all been asked already. So I wanted to thank you guys for all your continued service, your hard work, and wish you all the best throughout all these challenges. And our office remains open to supporting you in whatever way possible. And you have my support. Thank you.
Senator Chris, sir.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Chairman, I didn't want to just impose and take the opportunity. But thank you to the panel for being here and all the work that you and the team at GMH are doing and have done. Dr. Prince, I think you encapsulated the passion of what all of us believe, which is the service to our people at this level of care at GMH is absolutely paramount. And I think all of us understand that and embrace that. I've oftentimes mentioned during other hearings, people say Guam doesn't have universal health care. We do. It's the Guam Memorial Hospital. Because you need care, you go there, you get it, you can't pay, everybody else pays, right? Anyway, so a lot of great detailed questions from our chairs and everyone else. So I just want to drill down to the bottom line based on with a few questions of what I just mentioned. You could, I don't have the benefit of the request of last year other than what's been printed in front of us, but what subsidy did you get from the legislature last year in terms of general fund? Because as I'm seeing it, you're counting on revenue here of $3.5 million from general fund, and then of course leading all the way down to your ask, which is your shortfall over your 42.2. So what was the total general fund revenues that GMH received in 2022?
For 2022?
Yeah.
Okay, it's 3.5.
3.5.
3.5 million.
3.5 million.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it.
And then in 2023, so far, what has been your
3.5 million.
3.5? So essentially, and this kind of seems reminiscent of in the past when we've gone through this cycle of how many years we accumulate all the debt and all the obligations and the like, and then I'm just looking at this, and to me, there's really no other way to say it, but this essentially is, by and large, a shortfall and what GMH is coming before us saying what you need to operate, if you were to operate properly.
Yes.
See, because I look at the total of the budget, and for me, I think budgets should identify what are our priorities. I don't have a problem taking money from other places, but I think with this ask, and as you put it forward, I guess my next question is, and it was mentioned by our chair, there's quite a disparity between the request here that you have and the governor's request. Have you reconciled that with the governor?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because what I don't want to end up with here, and I'm sure our chairman and those on the committee are going to grapple with this, and we'll grapple with this in the global event that will be August when we all come back here and hash this out. But what we have before us right now really is, with this ask, if we were to attain this, there is going to be a significant adjustment to the current budget request that the governor has put forward and the current budget request that OFB is going to approve. And I'm saying this because of the fact that I want it firmly on the record that this is what GMH is saying that they absolutely need and require to operate at the operational level to complete its mission.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All the divisions have come together, submitted what they need. We trim it down as much as we can, and really at the end of the day, it just came down to this. It was much higher before. It was much higher, but we had to trim it down and asking everybody really what is the absolute basic things that we need, and it came down to this number. Yeah.
Can I mention one other thing?
Yes, Dr. Prince.
I'm so sorry. This is what I was talking about in my first paragraph. I know I probably spoke too long, so you probably forgot about things. But honestly, what you could just mentioned is our bare bones operational capacity, which is patients come to the hospital, they are sick, we get paid for that. this is what we're talking about. But honestly, we have a community responsibility capacity that goes above and beyond, as well as operations like with typhoon, knocks out everything, floods in the hospital, all these things that are not in our budget that we could attain for. So that's what I want to make sure that we're clear on. This 42.2 is really truly for the operational capacity.
And I appreciate that, Dr. Prince, because there's really no other way to sugarcoat this. I mean, there's no other way to we have got to, at some point in time, particularly with GMH and other critical areas, we've got to hold as much accountability as we can, but we have to also be true to ourselves that we cannot shortchange these areas. Because if we're doing that, then we're not meeting what our key requirements of a government is. And so I can't overstate the reason why I just want to focus on this issue. Because to me, if the committee is going to accept this as truth to form and veracity, and you've made it abundantly clear that this is what you need to operate as a bare bones operational number, then as far as I'm concerned, as one of 15, then this is the number you're going to have. And we're going to have to go in with the sharp pencil everywhere else and figure it out. That's my position. That's only one of many, but as all of the questions have been asked, the only thing I see floating, Yuka, and really in terms of the entire team here, Lillian, the only thing that I really see here floating is the ability for collections, both past and current. So the only thing that I can say really at this point in time is there's quite a bit of improvement with the 53% that's tracking. We'll pray that that tracks as well. And then do you have a committee, Yuka, that really just concentrates on the reconciliation and packaging in terms of the past due for the purposes of those requests coming forward?
Yes, so the billing staff is working on that. They've been working on it for the past maybe 3-4 months. We did get, when the network went down, we really shut down too. So that's part of the reason we're cleaning up the aging, is because once we get a good aging report, it gives them a tool to really track all the claims and know what's actually owed to us. It gives us a better picture of what our collections will be, where our shortfalls are as well, and one of the issues we need to do is automate more. There's a lot of paper still around too, so we're always exploring ways to automate more and make it less tedious so the claim can get faster, we can collect faster. That's a big initiative we're also pushing in our department.
Now, just as I close up here, I know that, there's always going to be, we also need to find pencil on the operations and go in, and we can do that together through quarterly oversights, or we'll call them roundtables. So they're designed to really be based on performance-based budgeting. But the reason why I'm leading to my final question that I'll ask the chairman to consider when we go forward is, because, as you said, Dr. Prinz, it's not an exact science, and we all know that it does float. Like I said, the Guam Memorial Hospital is basically the universal health care of Guam. Let's just call it for what it is. You don't turn anybody away. You can't turn anybody away. You don't divert like another hospital does or whatever else if revenue issues are a problem. So this is what we're doing here. So let's at least accept that that's part of this exercise. But the reason why I say that is because, to me, I think maybe we can be a little bit creative here too in terms of the overall ceilings and how we're going to adopt ceilings. And maybe we partner with this, right, when we set strong goals for us in terms of collections, in terms of how we're managing that, and we kind of update that as we go through. Because we may be also, if it comes to balancing the budget, we may be able to float some of this as well, because those revenues should float. So maybe we do something like, we accept your 42.2, because even with storms and everything else, with all due respect, Dr. Prinz, and I think your team is doing a good job. It's been in the media that you're hot on the trail to get reimbursements from FEMA and everything else to take care of that, but you got to float that cost as well. I get that part. But maybe we break this down somehow to say, we'll meet this halfway with appropriation and the rest will be authorization, and we'll track it. We'll say, if that comes to the third quarter of the fiscal year, sorry, Gov Guam, with the rest of whatever else is going on, this is going to get paid. But I think that, you know, depending on how we land in terms of what the overall reconciliation from the Office of Finance and Budget and BBMR, and when we get into the nitty-gritty, when we sit in here in the Committee of the Whole, you know, I just want you to, I needed you to say that, look, guys, we need this money. If we're going to break it down and we're going to go in and we're going to start evaluating, you know, division by division, we can do that in order to ask those questions. To ask you today right now and say, you know, how come employee A is getting $95,000 a year with benefits? I don't know. That's not possible to do in this situation. But I think we can find a way to make everybody understand where we're at if we all have a consensus that we accept this number. But I'm saying, and I thank you for recognizing that, Dr. Prince and the team, you know, saying this is a big ask, but I think we need to start really, really budgeting based on what are the priorities of our community and what are our needs. But also, because you have a revenue base, you know, let's meet each other somewhere in the middle and basically say, we can take you on this 42.2, but we're probably, like I said, if the chairman accepts, I'll make a recommendation that we split that somehow if the ceiling doesn't meet when we actually get down to the nitty-gritty, saying, you know, 21.1 is going to be your overage. And that's basically the difference between you and the governor right now, right, Mr. Chairman? I think that's what was broken out, that the actual real difference on the request right now is right around 20, a little bit over 20. And so we said, well, we're going to accept your number, and for the balance of the 21.1, we're going to say we can make an authorization level, but we're going to sit down every quarter and go over where are your collections, what are you doing, what can we do more? Because if we can meet that, then we balance our budget out easier, and we see commitment on both sides. And I'm just going to propose that as an opportunity. You know, our chairman will have the final word, and the committee will, and we'll haggle over it in the budget process. But I want to stop going year by year by year by accumulating the fact that you're not getting what you need, and what do we end up with then again? You look at the trend is there. Every 3 to 4 years, we end up having to go to the market somewhere else because your deficit is so big that you no longer can meet those requirements for your vendors and the like, and it's pay me now or pay me later, right? Yeah. So to me, we've got to make a decision that as in our partnership, and you know, I got to admit, I mean, COVID threw a wrinkle into everything. I mean, we just got to write off those years as being competitive and doing what we need to do just simply because we were, but then of course we had the benefit of the grant, so that leveled it out. But now that we're back to a true equilibrium again, where we're going forward without that hanging over our head, I think that if we develop a relationship, and because we could come in here and say, nice ask, and give you 10 more, give you 10 of this 42.2, but the roosters are going to come home. There's no other way around it. And we'll be going to the market, or we'll be slashing somewhere else afterwards, because of the fact that there's just no way to basically come to you and say, figure it out if you don't have the operational costs. So that's what I propose at this point. Maybe when you go back, you can, before we get into August, just work with your team a little bit more, work with the board a little bit more in terms of how you can say, these are some of our anticipated numbers, all things being wonderful, all things being moderate, all things being not so wonderful, but know that, at least from this, I'm just one person speaking, we got to help you, no question about it. But I think before we get to the final number, help us help you in terms of what you can do to exercise your commitment to realize and find some of this 42.2 as well. Dr. Prince?
Thank you, Senator Duenas. I mean, truthfully, that's absolutely correct. It's like, for me, it's like I have to be accountable with the people that I lead to the rest, right? We have to get more horizontal versus vertical, right? Vertical silos, that's a thing of the past. We got to get into horizontal, and we have to be accountable to one another. If we're not accountable to one another, and that's the thing is, because when one entity is accountable to the other, what is desired is for the other entity to also be accountable. And that is actually truly as long as we have a path forward and we're all being accountable to one another, then it's a happy marriage, but it's still with the purpose of what the mission and the vision are, a shared mission, shared vision. That's the only way, because again, I have to make sure that those who are under me are accountable to me, but also I have to be accountable to them and lead with the servant leadership to move path forward. Thank you.
And that's what I'm trying to drive, Doc, because truly, like I said, we could have opinions, we could, like you said, you're right. I mean, you cannot compare Guam right now to just about any, maybe you can pick a rural district somewhere, you know, in the deep south or something like that, and maybe come up somewhere. But you don't have a jurisdiction where you have an influx of migrants from, you know, a jurisdiction, a neighboring island, our family as well, but that have a whole different demographic in terms of their capabilities of paying and also the non-communicable diseases and the things that they present with. I say this because I know firsthand, I live with Ilkdegger. So I mean, I can appreciate, I know what happens. So I know that somewhere in here, there is the right mix and the right partnership. And that's why I say, you know, I'm going to take you on your number, but I'm also going to challenge you to meet us, you know, in terms of what are your efforts. And I think the community feels good too if they know, you know, you're pulling the wagon as far as you can pull it. And then, you know, we hitch up and help you pull the wagon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Brown, do you have any comments or questions, ma'am? And don't worry about the clock. You're on.
Yeah, I hope not. Hopefully I'm the last one this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, certainly to GMH for being here. And I know a lot of important questions have been asked this morning, but I did want to ask on your unclassified, and I know Senator Tello kind of touched on this, but what positions consume your unclassified? Because you have a number this year for 49. Who holds your unclassified positions at GMH? Well, so are we. We're all unclassified up here, but who is unclassified at GMH?
Sorry. Some of the physicians who we employ are unclassified status.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who else are in the unclassified positions that... Us, we're all unclassified, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't notice those indications on your staffing pattern. I just see names and salaries. I don't see anything that tells me who is or is not.
Okay. And as I said to Senator Tello, I will get back to her with the details of it.
Well, if you can provide it to the committee so we can see it, because I am concerned. I don't know if it's the case at GMH, but I think we've seen a growing number of unclassified hirings throughout the government of Guam and department and agencies on positions that are being filled that are in the classified service that should not be hired by unclassified. And we're also seeing a number of unclassified that have been extended far beyond the 1 year that's been allowed. Unless the law's changed, I'm not aware of that. But, you know, we're seeing a considerable abuse in some areas of the unclassified hiring because obviously they don't have to go through the hiring procedures. Okay. They are required to meet the credentials of that position, and they're limited to 1 year. And I'm just seeing it in the government of Guam substantially higher than I've ever seen it in quite ever. Mm-hmm. I mean, normally you have the director, deputy in a department. You mentioned, of course, I understand your physicians that may be unclassified. But I'm seeing a number of positions that are existing classified positions that are being filled by unclassified individuals, and that really should not be the case. I think it's an abuse of the system. I mean, even though I question the credibility sometimes of our hiring practices in the government, even under the classified system, I don't think we should be encouraging the abuse of it. So if you could provide that, that would be helpful.
Yes, Senator.
You guys did mention you're current with your payments. Are you current also with your vendors? I mean, historically, these have always been issues. But and I realize the money has been flowing, and I'm going to bring this up as I do with every agency. The money's not continuing to flow. We're seeing the numbers of revenue coming down, and I'm not going to be surprised if that trend continues. I think that's expected. We went through the incredible infusion of federal money as a result of COVID. We see that's drying up, as you are with GMH, of terms of money to be spent there. And even though this typhoon's maybe given us a little bump, I think that's going to dry up as well. And I think we have increased considerably the cost of government. And I don't think the revenue stream is going to match up with that. So I think we're in for a little bumpy road ahead. I don't think things are going to be flowing as glowingly as they were, and the legislature hopes a little more cautious with the amount of money that it appropriates and authorizes. But where are you with regards to vendor payments, retirement payments this past year? Are you all current with that? To the retirement fund?
Yes, we are. It's our vendors that we're having problems with right now. So we do owe a significant amount to vendors. Our payables today is hovering around 24 million right now to our vendors. Yep. So that's where we're struggling. So I did have the slide showing where our cash has really been decreasing, and then of course our payables are going to go up because the cash isn't coming in.
And in those primary areas, what vendors are not being paid? I mean, of course, I'm sure all the services and materials and medicines and everything that you need are all important. But we don't want to keep the historical trend of where, we end up getting a bad name and businesses not wanting to deal with us because, they're providing us the materials or the medicines, the service, the equipment, and we're not paying for it. And we're back in the same old unfortunate situation. So how are you looking at addressing that so that we can... Because they're the short, everybody's getting paid and, that's getting their salaries and everything, but then
Yes,
without the
you're
tools
right.
and the resources you need to do the job, we're not in a better situation.
So we do owe a significant amount to our pharmaceutical vendors and our medical suppliers. Those are the ones that we owe the most to, and it's really, our priority is for payroll, and we pay we're up to date on retirement and all the other payroll payables that we have to do, and then the next is the vendors. So whatever
How
cash is
far
left.
time-wise are you behind? I mean, I'm sure it's all at various levels, but on average, how far are you behind? 90 days, 30 days, 120 days?
Some are 6 months. Some are 6 months.
That's substantial.
Yes. Some are 6 months. The travel nurse agencies, we don't even pay them now. We just wait until FEMA pays us. So we've been waiting. The wait game with FEMA is pretty long, but we do have weekly meetings with them just to keep them apprised of where we are as far as the grant coming in and assure them that when that grant money comes in, they will be paid. So that's how we handle the amounts that we owe for the travel nurses. For the other pharmaceutical vendors, we try to make even small payments just to keep the accounts moving. We should be making larger payments, but sometimes they're okay with the smaller payments.
Are you in a situation where any of them are not providing any service or medicines or anything to the hospital as a result of the delay in
Yes,
payment?
we have credit holds.
In what areas?
I think mostly in the supplies and pharmaceuticals. There are some vendors that have put us on credit hold.
And has that impacted the ability of you to provide care at GMH?
We find substitutes and alternate types of medications if it's pharmaceuticals.
Well, I think that's a tight situation to be in. I hope you will update us on that because that is concerning. I mean, if the vendors are always going to be left at the bottom of the list of priorities, this cycle doesn't end. And I don't want to get to the point that, especially there's only so many companies that provide certain services or goods. I don't want to get to the point that they just walk away and we're left, our people are left at the disadvantage of not being able to get, and nor your professional staff being able to get what they need to do the job that's most important that they need. Because any one of us, any family member of ours could be, could be the one at GMH that's at the short end with regards to that. With your drug testing, what are your designated positions at GMH?
That's a very good question. We just had a BOT HR meeting last night, our HR administrator, working with the team to identify what positions fall into the TDPs, so that then we can proceed forward with the random drug testing with our
So that
policies.
would be safe to assume then that you haven't been doing drug testing then if you're just now
Not
identifying?
random. We haven't been able to do random.
On
but
your
now,
designated, just specifically in your designated positions, have you done any in the time you've been at GMH as the administrator?
Not as random, but we have done reasonable suspicion. We do regularly and consistently the pre-employment. We just also recently secured on a contract the MRO, because that's one thing that we didn't have either. It was an MRO. So now we have a contract for an MRO to then be reviewing those test results, especially the ones that are questionable. And so we are moving forward. I know, I remember the question you had last year, and so we are moving forward with our HR team to proceed with that random drug testing because...
And I just bring it up. I mean, you know, I bring it up every time, and it's a concern to me because we have such a big drug problem on the island. We all know. We're all suffering from it. We all feel that sense of lack of safety in our own community, in our families, when we leave our homes, when we come home. And I just want to make sure that those public officials that are working, and certainly in these critically designated positions that are preserved, you know, providing care to our people, are not on illegal substances that could harm their ability to perform their job and harm others. So I would like to see consistency. I know there's a previous executive order under the previous administration that does require regular drug testing of designated positions, and we're not seeing that. I mean, even the Guam Police Department, yes, recently has started, but you know, when you have officers saying the last time I took a drug test was when I got hired 20 years ago, that is concerning because these are critical positions that provide or have authority or provide direct service to our people. So I hope by next year you can let us know. I mean, that's up to you when you want to conduct these, obviously, but I think we'd like to see some consistency with the designated positions to provide drug testing.
Yes.
With regards to, I know that the speaker touched on this, but I'm looking at the additional amount you're asking of $5 million out of the general fund. You know, we've had substantial, and again, I have run agencies. I understand the challenges that you deal with. I mean, you have increased costs inherently, even if you don't increase anything else. Insurance and other things automatically are going to go up, and I understand that. But at the same time, as I caution, when I see the decrease in numbers, you know, I'm sure you're going to have to juggle, and you're familiar with that, and your many years at the hospital of knowing that you've had to juggle to get by. Assuming that the legislature is able and the revenue stream shows you can provide that we could provide the $5 million. But your pharmaceutical fund, this significant increase from 19.6 to requesting 33.7 for fiscal year 2024. I mean, how do you see that amount coming to that level to accommodate what your needs are? And is there actually 33.7 million in the pharmaceutical fund to accommodate this request?
Was that a question, Senator, for
Yes.
us? Well, can you repeat the question, if I may ask?
Yes, I mean, you're having a request from this fiscal year of 19.6 under your pharmaceutical fund to increase to 33.7 million. I mean, is there 33.7 million or more in the pharmaceutical fund? How do you anticipate that this is the amount you're going to be able to get? Does it exist in that level? 33.7 million.
That's the amount that we need. Where if it's going to come from pharmaceutical funds, I can't say that. You know, that's not my decision to make, but we do.
I understand, but do you know what the current balance is of the pharmaceutical fund?
No, ma'am, I do not know what the current balance is of the pharmaceutical fund.
Okay, and if it doesn't add up to 33.7? I would check. I don't know. We can check. I mean, I would check. I would want to know if there's that amount to accommodate, because otherwise it's going to be a substantial shortfall. Yeah. One other point I want to make, I know a lot of questions were already asked, but it was a concern, and I know Senator Tello touched on it with regards to the issue you had with the breach that she believes has happened at GMH, and probably question of degree, you could call it that. But as I mentioned then, and it does concern me how GMH responded. I know it's not budget related, Mr. Chair, I just want to make this one comment. It does concern me when the information provided to the public is not timely and accurate. I understand for your own reasons of investigation, and maybe, you know, Senator Tom knows better than me because his background, you know, this is right up his alley, but there might be certain things because of an investigation you might not want to reveal to the other party. But I think the need to ensure publicly that there's a level of transparency in the information you do relay is important. And during that time, I don't feel the information that was being relayed and the explanations that were being given out in press releases were being forthcoming with what occurred. There are ways to do that, and we understand there's certain information that can't be released because you might have an ongoing investigation. But I think it's important to be very forthright with our people because, you know, you cry wolf and then the time comes, we don't believe you. And I don't like that sense of distrust. It's bad enough a lot of people already have inherent distrust in our government. But when we put it in black and white, and that's what we issue in press releases, it's very concerning. So I just want to bring that up.
Well, thank you for that. Yes, we certainly would like to, but we also need to make sure that, like you said, we protect the confidentiality, and especially if there's an investigation that's still going on. And at the time, if you're talking about the situation with the IT,
Yes.
at the time we needed to just really contain the information.
I understand,
because FBI,
but Lily and I will point out the concern is when the information that is and was given out is not truthful. And there were other explanations given as to why there was a delay with regards to what eventually became known to the public. I'm just relaying, it's a concern, and that's something that your key people that do, including the authority of you ultimately in approving what message gets sent out.
Correct.
It's just important to ensure, even if you cannot, because of an investigation, outline the specificity of what has occurred, I think you need to give the public a general indication of what has occurred. And that was not, and it did not occur in what I saw in the actual Finno-English and writing in the press releases that were issued prior to what eventually became relayed to the public. I'm just bringing that as a concern. I mean, people just need to have some sense, and I think the continued distrust, it's things like that that, you know, make us question. And whenever we can avoid that, I think it's in all our collective interest.
absolutely. But if I may, in terms of distrust, we save people's lives in that hospital. So if one media puts out information that may not be accurate or truthful, that's their call. We give truthful information and accurate information, and we save lives in that hospital. We
Lydia,
do.
I'm not
so
arguing
that's the trust and the confidence.
I'm talking about press releases.
Well, but I
that-
appreciate if you as a leader too can
Excuse me.
speak that.
I'm talking about press releases that were issued by GMH. You know, I understand media can reinterpret however they choose to. I'm specifically talking about press releases that were issued by GMH.
Okay.
It's just something to be mindful, and all of us, I mean, like I said, some of us have carried that. I understand, it's a lot of burden to carry in the operations of an agency, but ultimately, you're the main person at this time for GMH, and it's a public expectation that we have, and I've been around the block enough to be in a position to make the comments I'm making, and I'm making them because I just think we all want to have a sense. I understand the important work that you do. I've been a patient at GMH. I understand the important work that you do. But when things like that happen, it makes people question. I question. And I just think that when it can be avoided, and in those cases it should be, you know, we want to make sure we're asking a question, we're getting the accurate answer. Even if you have an investigation, you can simply relay, I can't get into those details. We currently have an investigation. We don't want to impact that as a result, but we also want to let the public know. Because people had concerns. Is there private medical information accessible? I mean, those are legitimate concerns. Is, you know, my credit card, my payment, whatever, is that public information now? Because and nowadays they can get that information, and in a second it becomes world news. And so people have that concern. So I simply want to relay it. I appreciate the time and effort you've all put in coming here and presenting your budget, and thank you for the continued work that you do. With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to ask questions and comment.
Thank you, Senator Brown. You know, one question that was brought up, where would it be best to put a new hospital? Just a reminder, you know, everybody knows I'm the one that introduced to build a new hospital. I never said where. Want to say Central? I think the only place that's known as Central is called Tizan. You know, the belly button of Guam is Tizan. Plenty of property there. If University of Guam has space, then great. But I say, you guys figure it out, come to terms, call the oversight chair, my vice chair, who happens to be part of the task force, come to determination and agreement where it should be and be done with, because part of that clause was that we got to make sure we maintain the current hospital. So as you know, one of my colleagues brought up, we need to figure out the 42 million. Well, you know, your pharmaceutical fund is driven by 6.19% of the BBT, and maybe you could be watching out for whenever the CRE says we got some surplus, and whisper to us and say, hey, can you give us some of that? And the reason why I say that is because whenever there is money, I never hear from GMH asking. And you know, yeah, everybody else is asking, and you know, I'm only concerned because my parents love to go to GMH. even though there's really nothing wrong, though, it's like, and I'd always tease by then, God bless their souls, they're gone. But I know a lot of folks at GMH. The employees do a great job. You survived. God bless your souls. You guys have done what you could do. But like you said, COVID is gone. Typhoon came. Get FEMA to harden your infrastructure and get you, post-COVID or even further back to when they first moved in. I'm just saying this because while the federal government is willing to do this, do what you can. Get what you can. And I know you're going to be applying for grants, and I hope for the best. Because I tell this to every agency is that there's hundreds of millions of dollars in grants out there. They're waiting for folks to say, I'm applying. And we can talk about what you do. I know what you guys do. I see what you guys do. I'm just hoping for the best. And I'm willing to support wherever I can to help you get the funding you need. But, numbers don't lie. We're just going to have to work with whatever the numbers come that's placed on the table when we finally get to the floor. And we're just going to work it and tweak it and see where we can go. And with that, there's no one else to testify. I want to thank everyone for attending this hearing and for providing feedback and suggestion. Guam Memorial Authority budget hearing is now adjourned. It is now 11:57. And may God bless you and please take care.
Likewise, and thank you so much.